All right, it's a Thursday night. Time for a Las Vegas Tri Club member spotlight. And I got to tell a little bit of a story here. And we've got Isaac Moore. Isaac, how's it going tonight?
And it's great. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. And we got Bob Gamble, co-host. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
It's going fine, John. Thank you so much. Hi, folks.
Awesome. This is going to be a great spotlight. And I actually had to seek out Isaac and twist his arm, almost literally. Isaac is such a humble guy, but he's been a big time, long time member of the Las Vegas Tri Club and a big supporter of the club and everything that we do. And I've been wanting to get him on the spotlight, and he has been avoiding me. But he made the mistake of coming to an event that I was at too, and I said, Isaac, I gotta get you on the spotlight because you've got such a great story, and you've been a big part of the club. And he still didn't say yes. I had to really sort of put the pressure on and eventually got him to, because he's such a humble guy, but yet he's got a great story and a great level of experience in triathlon. So this is going to be a lot of fun talking about him and having the spotlight on him. So thanks, Isaac. But before we get going, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bob for the official introduction.
All right. Thank you, John. And I just want to echo what John said, Isaac. It's really wonderful to have you on. You know, every time I've talked to you, you're wonderful, supportive of the club, and you've got such a great, wonderful, positive attitude. So thank you so much for being on with us tonight. And for the folks who are listening, a little bit about Isaac. He is a longtime member of the club since 2013, did his first triathlon around 2012. And he got started like most of us got started here at Rage. But Isaac has done everything from sprints, dozens of ollies and sprints, and I have 4 70.3s, several full Ironman. So Isaac is an accomplished and well-rounded triathlete.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's wonderful to have him on tonight. And one of the things that I know about Isaac is he's a real estate broker for Sotheby's. And I know that they have tremendous long hours and odd hours, and they're working all the time. It's not consistent. So, but Isaac is again, an accomplished and a fast triathlete, even though he's I could call him an old fart, but he's not quite as old as me. So, but he's in the age group, and he's still fast, and he's still fast. So Isaac, welcome, and tell us, just to get started, how do you work training with the job that you have?
You know what? One of the things that's great for me is there's a constant challenge of how to manage your time. But being a real estate agent, you have a lot of flexibility to work your schedule around, and especially for me, I'd say a third of my clients actually live outside of Nevada. Some, and a third of them live outside the United States. So I'm always thinking ahead about what time it is on the East Coast, what time is it in Germany and Frankfurt, what time is it in Singapore, and with my coach Luigi Grulon, the way he builds my schedule every week, as soon as the schedule drops on Sunday night, all I'm doing is filling in the blocks. I know what I have to do, who I have to meet, and then it's just a matter of like in the Air Force, we got this expression, rigid flexibility is the key to air power. So we just, that it's just the exercise of time blocking your whole week so you get everything done.
So you actually are really good at time management and fitting these in, which is a skill needed in triathlon. And actually, you beat me to another question that I had, or another point that I was going to make that I had left out. For those listening, Isaac was 22 years in the Air Force. So thank you so much for your service and as well. And the job that Isaac had was not an easy job either. He was handling weapons in the Air Force as a mechanic and loading the fighter planes with live munitions. So it was not a simple task that Isaac did. So thanks so much for all that.
Thank you.
And you know, tell me, how did you get started in triathlon? It's like it's
You know what? I want to say it was like it was over 30 years ago. I saw my first triathlon on TV, and I was actually on active duty at that time. And my duties and responsibilities, along with raising my family, and along with going to night school to complete my degree, I looked at that and I said, man, one day maybe I can do that.
Mm.
And luckily, for me, my family, my country, everybody came first until about my youngest son hit 13.
Mm.
And one day I looked at him and I realized it was time for me to start going out and start checking off some of the things on my bucket list, because all of a sudden you go from it's cool to hang out with dad to dad, could you not drop me off in front of the school? So
yeah.
so I was like, I got to get a life and get ready for this new empty nester mode.
I love that. So that's so cool that you saw triathlon back in, 30 years ago, but then you actually started working towards doing the race some probably 20 years after seeing that first one.
Yes.
So that's really neat that that came back to you. So what got you started? You started triathlon here in Las Vegas. What got you into your first race here?
Well, I'd heard about a triathlon prep class that
Mm.
was taught here, and I was really excited about it. And one of my Air Force buddies, who was also a retired Air Force, we did several running events, marathons together over the years, and we both wanted to take the leap. So we go to this class, and the first few weeks of it was swimming, and I was like, this is going to be easy. I was a good swimmer when I was a kid,
No.
and I found out real quick it doesn't work that way. It's not like getting on a bicycle.
Yeah. That's right.
And so I went to the instructor and I said, excuse me, I can't keep up with the class, and I'm gonna drop out of the class. And but I wanted her to know why. It wasn't the class. And so she said to me, she goes, hey, don't quit. And I was like, hold it. I didn't say I was going to quit. I said I was going to drop out of this class, and I'll be back when I feel more confident at my swim game. And so the next week I showed up at a YMCA, and I walk in and they're looking at me, from a fitness standpoint. And I go, excuse me, do you have a beginner swim class? And
Wow.
and they look at me and they go, yeah, we do, but there's only like little kids and old people in the class. And I was like, well, that's the class I want to be in,
Oh,
because
you're smart
to
and
me,
humble.
well, the problem is everybody wants to start in the middle, and they don't want to build a foundation for success. So literally, I started in this swim class where, literally, I had difficulty swimming from one end of the pool to the other without, losing, getting tired.
Mhm.
But, I'm grateful that I took that class, because within a month, I was like swimming like, 30 laps.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
another month later, I rejoined my friends that were already out training in Boulder Beach.
Wow.
And it just went from there. A good friend of mine would bring his kayak out, and until I got comfortable, every Sunday he'd show up at the lake, and he would row his kayak beside me. And he's like, look, you don't have to panic. If you get tired, you just reach over to the kayak and rest, and you continue on. And I touched that kayak one weekend, and from there it was just a security blanket until
Yeah.
I figured out, I got this. Yeah.
Was that friend by any chance? Was that Tony Taylor?
No, Tony, I knew Tony from working at Nellis Air Force Base. I actually bumped into him. I met so many people out at Boulder Beach that I didn't know. I wasn't formally introduced, but everybody knew everybody. And one day I had my back turned and I could hear this guy and giving people instructions. And I was like, man, that's a familiar voice.
Familiar.
And at that time I hadn't seen him in like maybe 15 years. And
No
so
way.
I go up and I go, excuse me, sir, are you Tony Taylor? And he goes, yeah, who wants to know? And I said, hey, I used to work with you on active duty. I'm Chief Master Sergeant Moore. I was your command chief. And he was floored because, and just watching him at the time, I'm starting to do my first triathlons at 50. And I'm like, am I too old to do this? And here's Tony, and so he became an inspiration to me along with Melody Cronenberg. Holy cow, man. I mean, those guys, every time I got doubt in my mind, did I start this journey too late? They were right there to go, dude, you're big.
I love this story, Isaac. I'm so glad you shared it because, on one hand, we all have to start somewhere. And here you are at 50 years old, starting a new sport. And, a lot of people are afraid to start in the beginning, but I really like that and appreciate that you brought that up, and that takes a lot of confidence to say, no, I need to start at the beginning and then go from there. So thank you for sharing that part for sure. But now I'm curious. I want to go down memory lane. I want you to think back to that first race that you did. What was it like starting on the start line for that?
You know what? It was another humbling experience, and a little bit. I'll back up a little bit before I tell you about this first race. So the first race was like, it was Pumpkin Man. Yeah, it was Pumpkin Man in the fall. Like my first Olympic, I made the jump from sprint to, I was like, and so I'm out training, and I meet Melody. We're finishing a swim, and we're lugging my friend's kayak back to put in his truck so that he could leave, because that's the only reason he drove all the way out there, just the spot for me. I mean, that's a true friend.
Yeah.
And so I never formally met Mel, but she came over and she goes, hey, Ike, how you doing? Obviously, somebody told her my name, and I totally embarrassed myself because, she comes over, she says hello, and I go, hey, how you doing? I was like, my friends and I, we're training for Pumpkin Man. Are you doing that race too? And luckily, she just stepped into me so that no one else could hear what she was saying to me. So she goes, no, Ike, I'm training for Conan.
Yeah.
And I almost dropped to my knees because I was like, oh my God. So I was like, wow. I was like, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. What's your name? And she goes, my name is Melody. And I was like, hey, when Iron Man is on TV, like it was like 3 weeks later, I'm going to be rooting for you. And that's how, our friendship started. But I mean, what an inspiration to me, because I was thinking at that time, I was having all this anxiety. I'm like, hey, should I be doing this at 50? And boom, somebody comes out of nowhere and puts you in check and go, you can do this.
I love it. I love it.
That's a wonderful story.
And I love it that, what's neat is we all inspire each other. And that's neat that Mel, made that connection with you and that resonated with you. But you're also inspiring other people too. And I love that about you. So thank you for doing that. So that
and John, if I may, one thing that's really cool about what you said about when you were starting swimming is that you were smart enough to start from the basics in the beginning. Even though you were 50 years old, you said, teach me from scratch. And that's just smart. And that's, again, that's courageous at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's really like something that's left over from my time in the Air Force, in that you learn to be humble. And if you want to master something, you can't start in the middle. If you want to master it, you know, you want to be able to break everything down so that as you're training and putting these building blocks together that may not click all in today, but on down the road, one day you'll hit this, what do they call it? The tipping point where everything lines up and you're like, I got it. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
that's fantastic wisdom. And I mean, that is just an awesome message for everybody to hear, especially because, we've got a lot of new folks in the club. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. But my first couple of races, actually my first couple of seasons, the hardest part was doing my first Olympic and getting out of the water. My swimming was, it was developing. I was a weak swimmer, and the hardest part is getting back to the beach and seeing all the empty wrecks. But as you got better at your swim, at your transition, at different pieces, every year it got better and better. You start,
there were more and more bikes on the road.
Right, there's more and more bikes, and like now at this point, man, you get there and you see all these bikes, you're like, and you remember, I remember all those days, and when I see other people and I know exactly what they're thinking, I'm like, hey, this is how it starts.
That's awesome.
Don't quit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So, you got into doing 17.3s really early in your triathlon career. So that first race must have been a bit of success then, or how did that go to lead you into getting into some of the longer events?
You know what had happened with me, I'd always been like fascinated by endurance sports for years. I did have time to do, half marathons and marathons, and I just saw it as a challenge. But one of the things that I also did leading up to doing my first 70.3 is I would go out and I would volunteer at races, to help out at races. And to me, it was like a dual benefit. One, I like giving and doing volunteer work, but it also put me in a position where I could watch more advanced athletes and their techniques in transition, their techniques in terms of, energy conservation. So I'm like a sponge. If you see me out doing volunteer work, I'm learning. Yeah. Yeah.
That's another good message you just brought up. So it's like, this is one of the reasons why it's so wonderful to have you on.
No. Well, anyway, that's the method to my madness. It's like, it's a good thing I'm not a bank robber. That's how I pace the joint, right? I'll volunteer like the year before for, back then I volunteered for, I think, a race in Utah. And then I went down and volunteered for an Arizona 70.3 so that I could, just understand, because that's a big jump up from Olympic to 70.3. I
especially a big one that is run by Ironman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, I love that because you get to see the event from a different lens, and I love that you're saying, hey, you get to learn that way, which is so important, and so it's great that you're giving back, but at the same time you're also learning some skills. So it's neat to hear that you're drawn to the longer events too. So you did that 70.3, and you weren't too far after that you were signing up for an Ironman, a full distance.
A couple of years. I ended up getting injured. The plan was to do a second, the first 70.3 I did the Silverman. I think it was the last year they did the Silverman. And that race just, it woke me up because, my position, I'm thinking, man, I'm so new at this sport. But by the time that we got like at the 3/4 point in that bike, and I saw like dozens of athletes on the side of the road out, I
Yeah.
mean, they were waiting for medics to come.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is real. But luckily for me, a lot of those athletes were from around the world. They didn't come here.
Yeah.
They didn't, train in this weather to get acclimated. They just flew in, and maybe a day or two later, they're out here on the course and they're not prepared.
Yeah.
And they're all dehydrated. They're doing
Yeah.
7% humidity.
Yep. And I've been running that same course for like 8 months before the race.
Yeah.
So while I wasn't fast, I could finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So talk us through signing up for an iron distance, an Ironman. Like, how soon after doing the 70.3 did you say, "Oh, I want to double this"?
You know what? I mean, that was always the long-term goal. And again, I went the year before. So I did my first full Ironman in Arizona in 2018. And in 2017, I drive down to Phoenix. I volunteer to be a race supporter for the bike portion of the course. And that just blew me away because, in my mind, I thought like, for the Ironman level, everybody's like lean and mean looking. And I saw all these people of different sizes and shapes, just killing it.
Yep.
And I ran into this one guy, I'll never forget. 2 years before, I was doing the San Diego International Triathlon, and I met this gentleman that I didn't know at the time that I saw him. Then at this race, it was one of his first triathlons, and he was a blind athlete. And I remembered him. I was like, man, could this be the same guy? And as it turns out, he stops at a rest station that I'm working at. And, there's an athlete on the front of his bike. They both hop off to go to the restroom and get back on their bike. So they're going to the restroom. I'm stuffing, refilling all their water bottles. They come out to get back on the bike. And I lean over to the blind athlete. I can't remember his name now. And I go, excuse me, did you do the San Diego Triathlon 2 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And the guy on the front of the bikes go, no, I didn't, but he did. And I was just so impressed with this guy, because now I realize it's the same guy that passed me 2 years before. And I was like, anything is possible when you see that, because like the first time I encountered this guy, he was passing me, and I didn't know until he passed me, and I saw the lanyard between the two athletes that I realized that this guy was blind. And I was like, man, that's pretty. I'm like, how did he achieve the swim? How did they do that? But yeah, you just continue to see people that solve for problems. They're overcoming obstacles, and they're determined. There's a way. Yeah.
I love that. And I love, again, that you're talking about drawing inspiration from others around you. And I think that really speaks to the value of community, and you're a big part of that community. And so it's really neat to hear you're drawing inspiration from others. And again, I said it earlier, but at the same time, you're inspiring others. So I'm looking back, you've been doing this for some time now, and you've done sprints, Olympics, 70.3s, and full. What advice do you have for that athlete who's starting out?
You know what, first of all, just like me, whatever, when you start out, make sure you master the basics, and sometimes people, they just because you like something, when I started the sport, I thought I was strongest at running. And by the time you teach your body how to use all these muscles that you've never used before, that may not be the case. So, definitely work in a group early on. But to me, when it was time for me to make the leap up to a full Ironman, I knew I needed to work with a coach, somebody that been the trail. And again, I'm a very specific type of student. When I work with coaches or teachers, they've got to have the receipts. And what I mean by that is some people are good teachers, but the type of teachers and coaches I respond best to are people that I know can do it. They ain't got to be the best, but they've got to be able to say, okay, stop. Here's what's wrong with your technique, and get down and literally show me. That's how I best respond, and that makes me more confident in the advice that I'm given. But definitely, if I had to do it again, I probably would have started working with a coach when I moved up to 70.3.
So you actually you learned that you learn well from somebody who knows what they're doing, and you have the confidence in them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like they got, if they got the receipts, that's built in credibility with me, and I'm more confident that they're guiding me. The bottom line is, hey, I want to work with people who are walking the walk. If you're just talking, I'm not looking at your mouth. I'm looking at your feet and what you're doing through your actions.
Wow. That's a valuable lesson that you learned, and it's obvious that you're, intelligence is the ability to learn. So you're showing your brace right there. Tell me something else, Adik. What, in your journey, you've been doing this for 10 years. What else have you learned along the way that you think would help somebody just getting started? Because we've got a ton of people just getting started.
You know what? There's a certain consistency pattern. If, a lot of people make the jump too soon, and they're not ready mentally, because there's a lot of repetition that you need to build up to make those, those leaps to the next level. And if you don't have a consistent habits or a consistent training point, you're kind of setting yourself up to learn on the course. And there's a lot to learn on the course, but if you haven't learned all those basic things, when things go wrong on the course, you won't know what to do, and you may quit, or you may get disqualified. And that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned, is all those hours. I never count my hours or my miles during the year until I finish whatever big event that I had for a goal for the year. And then I like to go back and look after the goal is complete or the race is complete, and go, okay, what did it take for me to go out to do, this course in, whatever, 15, 16 hours, it doesn't matter. What did it cost me in terms of work, doing the work, doing the practice? And then I'll look and I'll see, okay, I swam, 200 miles. I, ran, 1,000 miles. I biked, 1,400 miles or something like that. And it's gratifying to see, the work that you put in, but now, the completion of a goal, and it just helps you to go. This year, my goal was, after I finished this one 2 months ago, was I was going to just drop back to doing 70.3s. And 5 days after the race, I woke up in the middle of the night and I rewrote my goal for this year, and decided that I would, again, dual purpose a goal. So this year I'm going to Frankfurt, Germany, for the European Ironman Championship, and do that race, and then continue on to visit some of my friends and customers who live around Europe, who've been dogging me for not coming to see them. So,
and that's a full you're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, now just unpack what you said. I mean, that's a really valuable lesson they learned, as far as, and I could tell by seeing the corner of John's mouth turn up. We were talking about consistency. You're talking his language. That's he's big on that as well.
Sometimes when you finish,
valuable lesson.
Yeah, sometimes when you finish a race, you're tired, and you need time to, for that switch to click back on, and you're like, I think I got another one in me.
That is awesome. Yeah. And Bob gave a chuckle too when he was hearing you talk about consistency, because that's what we were talking about right before we jumped on this call, is that consistency is so important. So that's such a great message that you gave
Yeah.
in terms of doing the work to put in, but you don't always need to obsess over it. You can do the work and then look back on it and still know that you were consistent. And I love the goal of Frankfurt. That's a wonderful, I've
Yes.
never done it, but that is lots of neat. And I love that you, sorry, this is just so much fun to hear you talk about this, that you woke up and said, oh, I'm gonna sign up for this next challenge. That is
Yeah.
great.
Well, and again, a lot of that, much credit is to Luigi, my coach. We always meet after a
Yeah.
big race, the debrief. And, so we're going through all the things that went wrong in the race and what I did to make adjustments and how I finished and all of that.
Mhm.
And, after you're about to, depart, and he looks at me and he says something like, hey, the next time that you put a full Ironman on the calendar, he said, I need you to think about doing a race earlier in the year.
Mm, mm,
And I'm like, well, why is that? And then he
yeah.
goes, well, if you do a race like, middle of the year, you don't have to train as hard through the heat of the summer.
Mhm.
And it just resonated with me. And then the fact that I just finished the Florida IM, and I'm like, well, I'm already here.
Mhm.
And it's, the coolest part of the year. So it'll be a lot easier for me to train up,
Yeah.
to that race. Germany. I actually lived in Germany for 5 years.
Oh, neat.
So I'm really looking forward to getting back, but it's not like Las Vegas hot.
Yeah.
It's like going to San Diego,
Right. Right.
to do a race there for me. So I'm like, okay,
Oh,
the
I
hardest
love.
part is getting all your equipment there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
yeah,
The logistics of it.
yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
This is just so great to hear. I am, and I told you this would go fast. We're already
Yeah.
over 30 minutes.
We're
So
Oh
already over
man.
30 minutes, and
Oh
I could
man.
go on for I could go another half hour.
I know this is
Oh
so
man.
much fun talking with you, and I love the stories that you have and these lessons that you have, and just a lot of gems in this podcast for people to listen to and pick up on. And I love the 2023 goals of stretching and going off for Frankfurt. Ike, thanks so much for joining us. This has been
No,
fantastic.
thank you. It's an honor to be here. Sorry, I evaded you guys so long, but I leaned into it when I dropped by the fitting event. I said, hey, can I help you guys pack up any of this stuff? Can I help with anything?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Well, Isaac, you set a fine example of what it means to be a vital member of the club, and as far as it's why it's so wonderful to have you in the club. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here tonight and for being such a wonderful member.
Yeah.
well, I appreciate it. And again, one of the things that drew me to this group, and when I travel around the country for other triathlons, people in the triathlon community are just so giving and honorable.
Mhm.
I mean, to a fault. I've never met anyone in this community that wasn't helpful, that
Mhm.
wouldn't do something for a stranger. And it's a good environment to, to live in, because we're all from different professions and backgrounds, but
Mhm.
when we suit up, we're one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that you embody is the fact that it's better to give than to receive, and
Mhm.
and you show that by volunteering as well and participating.
And
We
you're,
appreciate that.
yep, and you are a big part of setting that culture. So thank you. We've got a wonderful endurance community here because of people like you. All right, Ike, this is great. I really enjoyed this, and I'm sure everyone else will too, and listening to us. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you, and I can't wait for the spring to get
Yeah,
back out there.
that's going to be great. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll see you at the next race. Okay,
Okay.
thanks everyone.
All right, take care.
Later. Good night, everybody.
All right.